Today we have with us Mr. Kaimo Kuusk, the Permanent Secretary General of the Ministry of Defence for the Republic of Estonia. And thank you for joining ThePrint, sir. My first question to start this conversation is, I know there's a lot happening on your eastern borders, but I want to take it to South Asia and sort of understand, because we've been seeing a lot of interest from Estonian companies with regards to Indian defense purchases.
Sure.
Whether it's unmanned ground vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles, sort of the new frontiers. So I wanted to sort of understand, where do you see, this sort of defense relationship between Estonia and India, especially the private sphere, sort of going forward?
Well, I think the whole world is not too big, actually. So we need to cooperate. We need to cooperate between democracies. We need to cooperate between the countries which share the values. We definitely will not accept any violence. When we are talking about changing the borders, we are not accepting terrorism as a tool. So countries who are clicking all those boxes that yes, we are on the same understanding should cooperate more together.
Yeah. So where do you see then this cooperation going in the next 3 to 5 years, given that we've just seen tensions escalate in South Asia between India and Pakistan? So there is, a lot of conversation. So where do you see the cooperation then sort of going forward between Estonia and India in this sphere?
If we are talking about defense cooperation,
yes.
It depends on the company's interests, actually, in that sense. Private companies, they can cooperate together quite freely. I think there's possibilities, and if there's interests, the cooperation will come. And if we are talking about where we are heading, then that's definitely new technologies. You mentioned already UAVs, either also unmanned ground vehicles. We're talking about electronic warfare issues, but also I would mention the sea domain, because underwater infrastructure, we rely so much on land, be it electricity connections or IT connections, cables. To keep them safe, you need to be aware of what's going on underwater. You need to have tools to keep them safe.
Okay. Now, moving on to the Russia-Ukraine conflict in particular, there have been conversations within the European Union at the start of the war, which was disappointment in India's position, and then that sort of changed over the last couple of years. So how do you see two things? One is the understanding of the Indian position with regard vis-a-vis Russia and Ukraine. And the second part of that question is that India's earlier positions and its continuing use of Russian oil, when it comes to the question of the shadow fleet, which people say 50-60% of Russian oil is being exported via shadow fleet. So how do you see that continuing oil trade, the usage of the shadow fleet, with Estonia's defense interests when we talk about Estonia and India?
Well, trading with Russia means actually financing their war machine, financing also their security services, which are repressing and terrorizing their own citizens. So I've been arguing also against claim that even during the Soviet time, it was okay for the West, for example, to buy gas from Soviet Union. And I have argued against that, said that no, it wasn't okay for us, for Estonia, which was occupied. And buying gas from Soviet Union those days maybe prolonged our occupation for 10 years. We don't know in that sense, but to say it was okay, I don't agree. So that's why also I don't agree, or I call not to buy Russian oil. We actually can do better without them, understanding that we are not financing their missile building, which will hit the peaceful Ukrainian cities and civilians. So it's a matter of values in a world. And talking about aggression against Ukraine, I also don't share the neutrality aspect, because for me it's so black and white aggression. There's a clear aggressor, there's a clear victim who is defending itself. So being neutral to me is something I can't understand.
Yeah, and my final question is, we've been seeing a lot of questions with regards to NATO, with the US under the current administration, the ceasefire. There's calls from the US, and then they're saying we're going to walk away if nothing is done, and then suddenly the 2-hour-long conversation with President Putin and saying we're going to move forward. So how is that sort of what someone would say shifting positions or the shifting stance, how is that affecting the security of the Baltic region when the US is the most powerful military in NATO? And how do you see the ceasefire talks going forward? Do you see any sort of middle ground being able to be broken here, given that President Putin has this maximalist position and Ukraine is saying ceasefire with no condition? So how do you see that sort of playing out with the shifting stance in the US?
Well, if we are talking about peace talks, of course, it would be nice to end this aggressor activity and aggression and war, because, the people are dying. So if we look at the triangle, Russia, Ukraine, West or US to stop that war, then we see that two of them would like to see the peace. It's Ukraine, US, and one, it's Russia, who don't want it. If we are talking about peace, I have lived in occupied Estonia, and the occupier was Moscow. Peace under Russian terms is not peace, it's suffering. In Estonia, the resistance against Russian occupation lasted for 3 decades. The last forest brother who fought against Moscow regime died 3 years later. I was born, actually. So it's not very much known in a world, because Russians are master in propaganda. They will show you the people in national costumes and saying that, you see, Estonians are fine and happy. Yeah, well, in front of the cameras, but it wasn't the freedom or peace in a classical way as we feel in democratic nations. So yeah, at the moment, Russia is clearly trying to play the games, try to play Ukraine and West against each other. But I think Ukraine and West, US have quite well understood who's the one who's playing the tricks here at the moment. So I'm the one who believes in cooperation between the countries with the same values. So we need to cooperate even more in the West, but also globally with the like-minded countries.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us at ThePrint, Mr. Kuusk.
Thank you very much.